The Long Live Alternative Parties podcast. Stay friends with another exciting guest on this podcast like we always do. His name is Joseph Wolfson, and he's got an interesting coalition going on. We love to discover new alternative parties. We love to present their views to the world here. So welcome to the podcast, Joseph.
Hi there.
Hi, Joseph. Could you please get started by kindly giving us an introduction to yourself, a brief biographical sketch?
Well, my name is Joseph Wolfson. I'm majoring in political science at CCAC. What I've been doing is, a little bit before the election I was planning this, but after it I decided to expedite the effort where basically I'm trying to bring the third parties of the United States together.
Great.
To pursue things like ranked choice voting, dual party membership, and basically organizing against the Uni Party.
Oh, sure. That sounds wonderful. We like that. So you say you're a student at CCAC. For our audience, can you please tell us what CCAC stands for?
That's the Community College of Allegheny County.
Okay, in Pennsylvania.
Yes. That's primarily where I'm getting the groups together. I was a Democrat. After the election, seeing what's going on with Harris and the ironically undemocratic procedure of that party, I realized, that party isn't speaking for the American people.
Sure.
So I'm registered with the Green Party, but I'm also a member of the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania.
Oh, good for you.
And the National Libertarian Party. I've also been in touch with the Reform Party, which was Ross Perot's thing.
Yep.
And I'm working with the Forward Party on further coalition building. What I've been trying to do recently is promote candidates of multiple parties. For example, there's Ben Heckman, who's running for mayor of Pittsburgh. He's a libertarian, but he also supports the Not on Their Dime campaign, which is to basically divest Israel from Pittsburgh and all that. And I've also been promoting Alex Kidda for, I believe, the 35th legislative district. That district, the legislature of Pennsylvania is currently tied, and that kind of swing vote would come in handy.
Oh, sure. Okay. So for the people that you're recruiting for this coalition, what type of characteristics do they have? And what are you seeking?
Well, the idea would be to promote freedom of expression and of assembly, and, ideally and very hopefully not to support authoritarianism. Like, for example, the Constitution Party, it's a bit too theological and kind of wants to make the Bible into law and have a strict constitutional interpretation. That's somewhat authoritarian, I guess, because of paleo conservative tendencies, but also the PSL, which is kind of like the Communist Party. They have some Maoist tendencies. They're great in protests and all that, but I think they would be a bit authoritarian when it comes to being in power.
Oh, sure.
But besides those parties, I'm open to working with any freedom-based political party. That includes the transhumanists, even American Solidarity, the Pirate Party, so on.
Oh, great. Yeah. Yeah, it sounds like you got a good idea of the field that we're in. Sounds like you see where the alternative parties are and where we can go, so that's great.
Well, I see the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. I've looked at a lot of data. They are the most unpopular they've ever been. Most Americans want a third party.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of rushing to try to be that. But I think we can't just be left third party, right third party, centrist third party. We need something bigger than that. So
Oh, sure.
my Civic Party coalition, it's not really just a third party, it's a coalition of all the third parties.
Oh,
My
gotcha.
best idea of it is it's the anti-unit party.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Uniparty,
That the
that's
idea is...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I would say Uniparty, we have a lot of different terms we use for our opponents. Duopoly, two-party system, Republicans, Demopublicans. The Uniparty is an appropriate yet new one. I haven't heard that before, so I appreciate you introducing that to us.
Yeah. Nader was kind of famous for that, but
I missed
I
that
guess
then.
I guess ideologically speaking, I'm somewhere between Ross Perot, Gary Johnson, and Ralph Nader.
Oh, okay, wow.
A bit of syncretist, I think. I'm
Okay.
kind of a little bit all over the place. I would think of myself as a pragmatic progressive,
All
but
right.
this party or coalition I'm establishing, I wanted to live beyond me.
Oh, sure.
I don't want it to be simply an extension of myself. I want it to
Okay.
be bigger than that.
That's a good way to look at things, sure.
But I've been able to get the Libertarians to Pennsylvania and at least the Green Party of Allegheny County. I've gotten them to agree to pursue some ranked choice options.
Okay.
Reform is a bit hesitant to work with either, but I've, of course, alluded to the fact that the Green Party and the Reform Party have endorsed Ralph Nader at different points.
Interesting.
Yeah. But
So,
now No Labels is an interesting player in the field. They could be an ally, but I kind of see them almost as a corporate version of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to make a non-corporate version. I see the state and the corporate having way too much power, and I think the people need to have the power.
yes. That's good. Yeah, it sounds like you got a good thing going, and it sounds like you're reaching out to the right people.
I'm trying. It's been harder since after the election. I will
Oh, it
admit
has been.
I voted for Harris.
Oh, okay.
But not out of the kindness of my heart, but because I'm in Pennsylvania, it's a swing state. I was that concerned of Trump because
Oh,
I've
okay.
seen some clear authoritarian tendencies,
Yes.
at least hinted at. And we've seen that with the whole sending people to El Salvador without due process.
Yep. Yep.
But after that election, I kind of said to myself, you know what? I'm never going to vote for the Democrats or Republicans. Like,
Oh, good for you.
because, well, at least they have to earn the vote. They
Oh, okay.
are both entitled. They have a sense of entitlement. And,
They do?
yeah. Like, they're like, oh, all the leftists should vote for me. That's what, like, the Democrats think. The Republicans like Trump at the Libertarian Convention are like, you guys get only 3%, you should vote for me. And I think that's a bunch of hogwash. That in a real fair democracy, we should have fair competition, and it shouldn't just be two sides in the room. It's very polarizing, and it's going to divide everyone. What we need is ranked choice where you can vote with your conscience and strategically.
Yes.
And, this would allow coalition building, and it would allow for people, to be more represented.
Good point, yeah.
Yeah. And it would ensure whoever wins has to have more than 50% of the vote.
So a majority, not a mere plurality.
Right. For example, in 1912, Woodrow Wilson won like 90% of the Electoral College, but the only states where he had a majority were the southern states.
Wow.
If we had ranked choice, we probably would have had Teddy Roosevelt as president again.
Okay.
And not Wilson, who was pretty awful.
So you think Roosevelt would have been better than Wilson?
Well, yes. Woodrow Wilson basically resegregated the entire federal government, promoted the idea of imperialism, even beyond McKinley and Roosevelt. And look, Teddy might have gotten us into World War I sooner, but the war would have ended. We would have had more of a say. Perhaps the Treaty of Versailles would have gone differently. And in fact, it's possible the Soviet Union might not have even formed.
Wow.
Because when we got into the Russians were already depleted as a force, and that caused the revolution in some parts.
Oh, sure. Wow. Good analysis.
Yeah. But, I think ranked choice is the way to go. And it means the Democrats and the Republicans cannot have a duopoly on the political conversation. It would be an equal battlefield.
Well, that would be good, yeah.
Yeah. And also, you wouldn't want to, for example, if a Democrat's running, they wouldn't want to insult the Greens because they might want the Greens vote. If no one gets over 50%, there has to be a runoff.
Yes.
So it would allow not just for division, but coalition building, friendly competition. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, you go.
I would say it would be good overall.
Yeah. And I personally see the neoliberals and the neocons, I kind of see them as the neo-Whigs. And we need a new party to replace them. Or at least a new party system.
Okay. So for our audience, when you say neoconservatives and neoliberals, can you please elaborate on what you mean specifically by that?
Well, the neoliberals, they're kind of, like Reagan and Bill Clinton. The neocons more like Nikki Haley and George Bush. They're basically corporate bought, the neoliberals, I mean, it's like the establishment, basically.
Okay.
And the neocons are the war-hungry ones. The neoliberals are less war-hungry, but both of them serve corporate donors since
Gotcha.
Citizens United.
Okay. So you want a system where people aren't serving the corporate donors first and foremost, where they're serving the people first and foremost, right?
Right, yeah, absolutely.
So what other reforms would you advocate to make that happen? Would you would you ban PACs, or what would you do?
Well, certainly corporations should not be seen as people. Corporations are made up of people, are made up of individuals. And we should also, and they're so intrinsically bought into the system, and the system is made to currently benefit them over the people of the United States.
Yes.
And that's not what the founders intended. So the founders disagreed on a lot of things, but I'm positive none of them would have intended for corporate rule to be everywhere.
Okay. So is that something that they couldn't foresee because the corporate state was not as big as back then, or is it something that they were aware of, but they thought that they needed to not talk about it for the good, to pick and choose their battles for what they wanted? They wanted the union.
I mean, they were aware of feudalism and serfdom, but I think the idea of the corporations, the idea of crony capitalism, I don't think was as posed of a threat to them.
Oh, gotcha.
Like, they didn't kind of see the influence of that. because the Industrial Revolution hadn't happened yet.
Oh, okay. It was happening, but it wasn't completed at that time, right?
Well, yeah, we didn't, get to the point where, we have the Rockefellers and all that.
Oh, okay. So there was about 100 years later was where the corporate state set in. So they were a long ways from that, and they couldn't have known exactly how it would work out.
Right.
Okay.
But, yeah. But what we currently have is we have corporate welfare, but we have barely any social welfare. And the Nordic countries have kind of kicked our butts on that. And we should be helping our people instead of the corporations that just pay the politicians.
Sure.
Yeah. But there is some agreement even on the Libertarian Party of getting rid of corporate lobbying and people can donate as individuals.
That's true.
Now, do we count unions and nonprofits in that? There is disagreement. But I think genuinely everyone agrees the corporate lobbying has got to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I also think, you?
So to get rid of that, would that be limiting campaign contributions the amount, or would that be eliminating them completely from corporate entities?
I think certainly limiting it completely from corporate entities. People would have to donate as individuals at the very least.
Oh, okay.
Now, ideally, we should, limit the amount maybe. Like maybe
Yes.
you can't donate as an individual more than 10,000 in a
Yes.
month.
Yeah.
Something simple like that. But that's probably where we would see disagreement with the Libertarians. The Libertarians are kind of the most fragile part of this coalition because, though there is a lot of disagreement on them, but I would see the coalition as mostly probably on the left.
Okay.
Because most of the conservatives are going to support, the corporations or Trump.
Yeah. Okay.
But I do think the Libertarians would agree very much with everyone else on foreign policy.
Oh,
that,
yeah, sure.
let's not start all the wars and all that.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're very critical of any government overreach, and they think giving government a sliver of power will lead to them having another sliver and so on, a slippery slope effect.
Yes.
And I see their argument. I do disagree with it to a certain extent, but also I kind of agree with it also.
Sure.
Yeah. I guess I'm a conflicted individual. I'm both related to Ludwig von Mises and Karl Marx, so I guess there's a tug and pull
Wow.
with me.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, wow. So it sounds like you're synthesizing the best in those two opposing positions.
Right, but I'm very critical of both the state and the corporate. My idea is we need to decentralize both ideally, and the state should primarily serve as an extension of the people rather than as a separate entity.
Okay. That's a good way to put it. Sure.
Now, one thing I will probably disagree with a lot of people on is the idea of term limits.
Oh,
Because
okay.
there are places with smaller populations, if we have term limits, then we're limiting really experienced people from continuing to represent. And then maybe because there's less of a population in other areas, maybe then we have less qualified people being the only people able to be elected after qualified individuals are term limited. But that's why I think ranked choice would do well, because it would constantly make the person in power have to continue to fight for the people, and if they can't do that, then obviously they're not going to win the majority.
Good point.
Yeah. I see both. I see both arguments on term limits, but ultimately, I think I would leave it more to the people. Yeah.
Okay.
Age limits I can get around. You know, if we have like a cognitive test to make sure that they're cognitively still there after 75. But I wouldn't like block a certain age because, you know, what if the transhumanists get their way and people are living till 200? Well, that wouldn't be fair now, would it?
Exactly. Good point. So how about this? Some people, because you gave an example of local areas, that small areas, they might need the term limits. So what if somebody would say then we could have term limits at the national level where we have plenty of people to pick from, but at the smaller areas where they don't, then we could have term limits. We
already have term limits for the president, but everything else is kind of still elected at the state or local level.
Okay.
Maybe for judges, I would presume, or secretaries, I guess, if we had them by election.
Okay, so you think the Supreme Court too should because a lot of them are older. So do you think they should have they should get out after a certain age?
Maybe like after a certain time, the Congress then has to vote on do we keep this person or not.
Okay.
Something like that, maybe. Because, you know, experience and wisdom, you know, they're two different things, and they can vary at different ages.
Yeah.
People have different lives, you know, maybe, you know, there might be an example where a younger person is more qualified than an older person, but there are going to be a ton of examples where it's the other way around.
Yeah.
I think John Roberts is doing a good job.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas, he's a bit too biased and I think corrupted by some influence from people like Harlan Crow.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Yeah, so, but again, I think we should keep, you know, the qualified people. If they're not qualified, you know, then we have a vote of no confidence and they leave. Yeah, but term limits are a little bit iffy because, you know, there's people I do like who have had a lot of terms. For example, Bernie Sanders has done some good work.
Okay, sure.
But then there's also people we don't like who've had a lot of terms, like Mitch McConnell or Chuck Schumer. So how can we have the best of both worlds? How can we have a win-win scenario? And that's where I basically default to ranked choice, assuring that if they continue to be in power, it has to be with the confidence of the majority of the people.
Sure. Yeah, ranked choice voting is a good solution for this, it sounds like.
Yeah. Now, it's not a perfect system, you know. Some say approval, disapproval voting might be better, but ultimately I worry about that because we might just have more demagoguery where people then try to have smear campaigns against each other and try to be the most favorable candidate even if no one's favorable. I very much worry about that, but ranked choice would kind of assure that you could have multiple favorable candidates and you could rank them in preference of policy or just personality even.
Sure.
But if we had just strictly approval voting, I very much worry about having further demagogues.
Oh.
Yeah, where it would just be a pure popularity contest rather than who's the best policy-wise and all that.
That's an interesting thought about that. I haven't heard it put that way. We've talked about approval voting on the podcast before. Haven't heard it thought of that way. Interesting.
I'm trying to, any other further questions?
Any other further questions? That?
Yeah.
Let me think here. So, here's the question I have. Okay, what I found interesting, you mentioned libertarians, and you mentioned Trump. So, I know some libertarians, we talked on this podcast, some like what Trump does, and some have said they voted for Trump. So, and he has done some libertarian things that would be in line with libertarian, yet with him, it's a mixed bag. So, he's not a pure libertarian. He does libertarian things, and he does other things. So, here's a question I have in regard to that. What do you think would be worse, to have a king that would be a libertarian king, or to have an oppressive bureaucratic democracy?
Well, why do we have to have either of those horrible options? Is my opinion, and my opinion would be, if you're given two horrible options, let's not choose between them. Let's have a third option.
Okay, sure.
Ultimately, at least the bureaucracy, I think, could be more reasoned with. And at least you could probably change it over time. You know, it's really hard to change one individual, a system of one individual power.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Trump, my view is, allows libertarians to perceive him as destroying the bureaucracy and all that. That's not my interpretation of it. My interpretation is he's, you know, when he was elected the first time, he didn't fully think he was going to win. He didn't have a plan. So, you know, he had a lot of people around him telling him no. After he lost 2020, Project 2025 was made so that he could just get rid of people who will tell him no, surround himself by yes men who will, like, tell him, like, yes, do whatever you want, Mr. Trump. I'll do whatever you want. So it's not that he's, you know, trying to destroy, you know, the bureaucracy and all that and stop government overreach. He's trying to stop people from stopping him from overreaching.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
You know,
yeah.
Like, he's not getting rid of, like, the, you know, trying to think of an example, the postal worker services because he, like, wants, you know, more competition in the markets. No, it's because he doesn't want the stupid, you know, people having all the information they want. He wants to control the information. You know, the USA, it goes to helping some causes that his enemies might benefit from. So he's like, you know, let's defund them. If the masses are educated, they're more likely to resist them. So let's de-educate the masses.
Oh.
But, you know, Trump, it's not that he's trying to defund the government. He's trying to, I guess, pick apart any form of resistance.
Oh, okay.
You know, because look at the people he's picking. He's not picking like, you know, Chase Oliver to be Secretary of State. He's picking people like Mark Rubio, who will do whatever he says. You know, he's not, if he really was trying to defund the government, he would go after the military, like defund the military and all that massively. But no, he's going, the target is Social Security and education. And I find that very suspicious.
Okay.
You know, hey, maybe I'm wrong, but I have this weird feeling I'm not.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. But, you know, Trump wanted to do some crazy things when he was president. I've read Bob Woodward's book. For example, at one point he wanted to try to nuke a hurricane, and people told him, Mr. President, we shouldn't be doing that. That would hurt the population. You know, there is a benefit to having no people around him say no. Now those people aren't going to be there anymore.
Yep.
So that's my concern.
Yeah, you're painting a bleak but accurate picture.
Yeah. Now, do I think Trump is going to be like a crazy, like authoritarian fascist? It's possible. I think that would only happen if Trump gets emergency powers. And that would likely happen if, like, we have something like the BLM riots and all that. Which, by the way, not all BLM was riots. Most of it wasn't, but enough of it was to the point where it was a bit much.
Okay. Or if something like 9/11 happened again.
Well, or I guess Unite the Right rally where there's like massive protesting and fighting. But if that were to happen across the country, yeah. You know, he could be like, oh, these leftists are dangerous. Let's, outlaw them.
Huh.
I mean, he's already doing that with people who protest against Israel.
Yeah. So what about Elon Musk? What's your opinions about him?
I think Musk, he's defunding these places these parts of government that were looking into him. So I really doubt that, this is for the benefit of the good. And I love my libertarian brethren. I agree with them that the state has a lot of power. The problem is, if you just cut the state right now, the corporate is just going to fill in the void. And they're going to chase profits.
All right.
If you're going to cut them, you got to cut them both. But Musk is not ending any welfare for the corporations. In fact, he is only cutting welfare for the people. Like, he's trying to cut Social Security, education, and all that. I do think Musk has a little bit too much power, but, it's just the corporate rulers are now out and about. They've been doing this behind the scenes for a long time. But now we just kind of see it.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
But my prediction is, and I do not think the Democratic Party is going to save the country from Trump. It ain't happening. They serve the corporate donors. For that to happen, the party would have to fundamentally change. We would have to see people like Chuck Schumer be voted out. And maybe that can happen, but I'm not putting my bet on it. And that's why I would rather work with the third parties, try to get ranked choice. It would make everyone have to do their best, and we would have fair competition.
Yeah.
The Democrats and Republicans would not be entitled to votes. They would have to earn them.
Yeah.
And we can't do this at the national level. It has to start locally.
Okay.
We have to locally pass it state by state, ranked choice voting.
Okay, so local.
Because if we do it at the national level, they're going to block it. It's like Coke and Pepsi not wanting there to be another cola.
Yeah. Good analogy.
Anything else I can answer?
No, that's pretty good. That you gave us a good overview of your perspective and of what you're trying to do. You told us what you thought was wrong with the system, and you presented a solution, and you presented an opportunity for people to get involved. So how can they get in touch with you? How can they get involved in this Civic Party Coalition?
Well, they can visit my I Sign With profile or the Twitter TikTok I've made, I have a link to a Discord. They can give me their direct input, their direct ideas. We can discuss which third-party candidates we can back and how likely they are to go forward. Personally, I'm going to be running for state representative in 2026.
Oh, you are? Good.
Yeah. My idea is to work my way up, maybe to even the House, the Senate, even beyond that. But I'm fine if I'm not the guy at the top of this operation. I just want everyone to be able to work together and point to the common enemy and let's fight them. I don't care if I'm the one leading the charge or not.
That's a good perspective. So in 2026, we like to interview candidates on this podcast. So if it's okay with you, maybe we could have you come back and ask you about your campaign.
Of course. I would probably be running with the Greens because I align mostly with them, and honestly, if I need the most help with ballot access, the Libertarians are pretty solid on that, and there is more disagreement with me than there would be in the Greens.
Oh, sure. Okay, yeah. So how about, is there, so the Facebook page that I found you at, is that a good place to get in touch with you for people who want to get involved in this coalition?
Sure.
All right, great. I can put those in the show notes. And all right, great. Yeah, that sounds like you got a good thing going, and you gave us a good analysis of the political climate we have today and solutions to get out of this mess. So we appreciate hearing about that. Thank you for coming on the podcast today.
No problem. I love this podcast you have. I listened to a couple episodes the other night. I appreciate you showing the American people that there are more choices. We just have to civically fight for them.
Exactly. Thank you so much.
No problem.
We wish you all the best in your personal and professional life and your political activity as well. Take care.
You as well.
Bye.
Thank you.